When it comes to OB and Gynae, there's one name which is most loved by the patients. That's Dr. Bushra Gul. Welcome, Dr. Bushra Gul. Doctor, we hear a lot of terms such as PCO, PCOS, which we say that PCOS, PCOD. There's a lot of confusion based on it as well. Could you please help us to understand what exactly is it?
Yeah, you're very right. Every patient comes and they have their own way of saying that PCOS, PCOS, PCOD. And one of the patient came and she said, I have PCO morpho. And I was like, wow, that's cute. Like, you know a lot. So, PCO is polycystic ovaries. When you say PCOD, it's vague, but it's not very defined. But I just read somewhere recently that they call it when it's just the sonographic appearance of the polycystic ovaries. And then there's a PCOS or PCOS. That is a syndrome. We know the syndromes are bigger than diseases. So when you have all the metabolic manifestation in your body of the hormonal problem, then we call it polycystic ovarian syndrome or the PCOS or PCOS.
Right.
A lot of people come and they say, we had PCOS or we had the PCOS or we had this thing, now we don't have or we do have. Very strangely, like people do not know criteria. Even some of the doctors, they do not explain the criteria to the patient when they diagnose PCOD or the PCOS. There is some criteria which is called Rotterdam criteria for diagnosing the PCOS. So criteria has 3 listings and one need to have at least 2 of them to be diagnosed as the PCOS. So one is polycystic ovarian morphology, like when they go through the ultrasound, doctor finds certain number of follicles and then they say that yes, you have polycystic ovarian morphology in your ultrasound. Number 2 is irregular periods or an ovulation. Irregular periods or an ovulation, if it's there, an ovulation you can't just know by history. You may know by history in a way, but not directly. If somebody is trying to get pregnant and they're not getting pregnant, but there could be a lot of reasons for not getting pregnant. So an ovulation or this irregular period is one of the criteria. Then there is a third one. Third one is either somebody has manifestation of high male hormone like acne, hirsutism, or they actually have objectively demonstrated by the lab test of their free testosterone that their male hormones are high. So if you have one of the criteria, then you cannot be the PCO. You could be some other disease, but not the PCO. So people can have irregular periods, isolated, without any polycystic morphology, without any high androgen. So they are not PCO. They can be called an ovulation because of high prolactin. Also people can have an ovulation and they can have irregular periods. So same way, people must fulfill the criteria. There has to be at least 2 from the 3 to be diagnosed polycystic ovarian syndrome. And one more thing, some girls come very young and they said we are PCOS. So one thing, before the age of 16 nobody can be PCO. So one must be age of 16, then they are fulfilling 2 out of 3 criteria, then they are called polycystic ovarian syndrome.
Could you please let us know a few symptoms of PCOS?
Yeah, you're talking about the full manifested polycystic ovarian syndrome. So irregular periods, yes. Hirsutism, yes. Acne, yes. Weight gain, yes. And since they are metabolic syndrome, they can even have fatigue, depression, fatty liver. So they are not for the criteria, but they are just manifestation of the metabolic syndrome. Even the diabetes, hypertension, obstructive sleep apnea, these all things can be the manifestation of polycystic ovarian syndrome. One more thing I will tell you, when you talk to the full-blown PCO picture, these people, when they're talking to you, you will see them doing a deeper blink. Like they will do, normally we do very quick back But when you talk to those people, you see that they're slow, and they would have waited for you long outside to come to the room and have discussion with you about their condition. But when they're in front of you, they do not have attention. And then you see, like, she waited all this long, but she's not listening to me. She's not understanding what I'm saying. So this is also one of the sign and symptom of PCO, that they, like, it's all about, it's the whole well-being. And this is the reason, all the more reason it should be addressed, because it just doesn't affect their physical health. It's mental, it's emotional. So, and it's not just one pill can fix everything. It's a whole education. They need to have the whole understanding of the disease. They cannot buy diets to reduce weight and then they can make their metabolic profile better, but they need to understand what has gone wrong in this generation, what has gone wrong in the era we are living, which has made us more prone to have PCO, because these diseases were not there. And especially in Dubai, it's too much comfort, too much sedentary, it's too much talabat. Normally you might have to go to the landline to order a food, even if it's talabat. Now you're just sitting where you were sitting since morning. You took the mobile and you just maybe not taking the mobile, also using a smartwatch and just making a phone call, and the food is just at the door. So this much comfort and no action has made us more prone to have polycystic ovarian syndrome and all the metabolic diseases.
Right. Doctor, can it be hereditary?
Yes, but it's not 100% hereditary. I will tell you, like diabetes, insulin resistance, hypertension, cholesterol high, they all are hereditary. But one thing, I met one family, and by chance I have to come out of the clinic, and I saw her kids and they all were obese, and she and everyone, and I asked, are you sure that you really have a disease or it's your dining table? So that is also a problem. Like our table, what we are presenting, what we are eating, could be a problem. Maybe there's always a food which is really unprocessed, or maybe high calorie, or it could be if it's from one home, everybody's suffering. There could be genes, but there could be habits. I was yesterday in hospital, and one of my Italian colleagues, she was still very slim, but she started talking and she said, festive season just went, the Christmas, New Year, we had a vacation, we had some birthdays, and I am really feeling stuffy and I am on full diet, enough. And I just look at her and I was like, wow, you're so slim, even saying that. So there's some concept, set point. So at some point, even when we are putting on, we are like, enough, now I have to go on diet. This set point also could be different for everybody, but there's something called executive decision of the brain. So from a family, like you see, like we might be having a bigger set point being Asians, but some of us actually, especially the celebrities, they're very slim. So they use their executive decision of the brain that my set point, when they see the scale, they start action having earlier. So even you can change your genetics by your action. You can modify things by your action. So you can make that executive decision that my set point is 51 kilo or the 55 kilo, and you can do the modifications by that. And over the time, those force of habit, you can change your genes, not genes per se, but by saying the set point that you will not be prone to because even the genes, they express at certain weight, at certain lifestyle. So if you change your lifestyle, you can make your genes not to express. And over the generations, it can become the good thing. So when I was small, I didn't knew what a celery stick. I was seeing a show the Barney show with my kids, and I saw it was Halloween. The kids were going door to door collect candies, and one lady gave celery stick to the kids, and I was like, what on earth she gave to the kids? And this celery stick, now this is my breakfast. And I always tell my patients that you can change your genes, not just by giving the genes, but giving that education to your children that this is something which is really edible. And mom and dad used to eat that. So, like when we accept that it's just genetic, we can't do anything, we give up. So for me, like I'm coming from a family which is very highly high prevalence of diabetes, hypertension, and people dying of strokes. So like even their far relatives which live very, very far, my mother is immigrant from UP. So those die of a stroke. And my mother's brother and sister, they die of a stroke also. So then I knew myself that I'm really at high risk of diabetes and hypertension. So I was scared because I saw my mother's brother and mother's sister having paralysis for 8 years before they actually die. And they were limited in their life. They didn't see much of the life. So I had bad lessons. So I was avoiding sweets. I was avoiding everything. And mashallah, like I exceeded the age in which actually they died. But alhamdulillah, I don't have diabetes, hypertension. But that's a discipline we practice, and we all have to practice it. So I educate my patient that by changing those things, by bringing celery as a part of food. And I also recommend hulled barley. If you see, like right now, I don't know any other food in the world is so unprocessed as is the hulled barley. Barley with the husk. We consider that roti or khubz is a unprocessed food, but let me surprise you, this is very processed food. We consider it healthy because our moms were taking, our families were taking, they were healthy, but they really had a tough life. So if you soak it overnight and just boil it and use it like rice, it's very unprocessed. So, but if you make it flour, then you make a bread, you knead it, and then you make a bread. So it's super processed. So, this is the very important thing. Now, when I say hulled barley or when I say celery stick, taking it raw, when you take it raw, it's 6 calories, but when you boil it in the soup, it is 30 calories. So what I mean to say that your stove, your knife, your processor has to be used less if you want the best of you and not suffering from all the metabolic syndrome. So there are 2 concepts come out of it. Our gut, and this I would refer the book Gene Eating by Jalzio, who's an obesity geneticist, and he's working in Cambridge. So his book, amazing. I love that book. If you say one book in the world, I would say that for your health, this is the book. So he says that your gut is 26 feet long. And you might be knowing that gut has the second brain. So when it is 26 feet long, it has a second brain, that after brain there are more signals in the gut. So this all 26 feet has signals, and any food which successfully passes all this 26 feet, that will bring the best of your health. When we say protein diet, it is making you reduce weight because protein manages to go farther in your gut, and then it let your brain have the signal from that certain part of the gut which is very healthy signals, and it tells your brain to induce the satiety, and it tells the brain that yes, we are full, we have the right stuff, and now you should stop releasing the signal to eat food and all those things. But when you use hulled barley, it might be going even farther than the protein. So one should take a good mix of protein, and one should take a grain which should manage to go farther in the gut. So, Ozempic, Ozempic is the same thing. These are signals which normally in the body of anyone get released when food reaches in the last part of the small intestine and the colon. So that signal is GLP-1, the semaglutide or the Ozempic. So if you're taking the herb barley, or if you're taking unprocessed beans, rather making flour or the smoothie, if you're taking it just like that, like we take chana chaat, so we can use this mixed bean to make that chaat thingy, and it will be pleasant also. And I don't recommend herb barley to be taken with the milk, but it has to be taken with whatever you grew up, like lentil, like chicken potato curry, like okra, aubergine, taro root, like whatever you grew up with. You don't have to change. Like some people think that they have to take the barley in a sweet form. No, you have to take it just like that. So if your food went very farther, then you will release the same signal which people get when they inject Ozempic. So why not going the natural way, rather having the Ozempic? Because you can have Ozempic for some time and it can be having the side effect also. But if you took the herb barley as your grain for long time, then you can have that effect, and it's doable because you can make tasty recipes out of the barley. You can boil them in the chicken broth or the vegetable broth, and you can put your amazing vegetables and everything, even just like a plow you can make, or you can add things over it. When I started recommending patients the barley, and because it's not available very commonly, I used to tell them the shops also which sell this. So it is Adil store and the Moon supermarket in Barsha, because patients were from Barsha mostly. And one patient came and she said, it's finished in these shops. And I said, oh, I'm doing the effect. But it's not promoted. Why? Because it's healthy. Why hotels, they do not serve dishes with the barley? Maybe we know the value. One patient told me that it's a parrot's food. Other patient said, is it even edible? I ate and I can't tolerate. So there's some taste which comes in your tongue and some taste which comes in your body of the well-being, and you feel like that I really want to do something because I am having consistent energy. So what barley does, it releases consistent energy into your bloodstream. It doesn't do the crashes. The worst is the chocolate ice cream which dissolve in your mouth. So you do not get any signal from your gut. Rice probably very early in the gut gets dissolved when you get food coma, because you get high sugars and insulin peaks up and body develops insulin resistance. So in the beginning, maybe they might not look good when people are taking it for the PCO. There's another book by a biologist, and it is called Your 10% Human. What does it mean? It means 90% of you are actually bacteria and you are only 10% you. And those microbiomes mostly live in the last part of the gut. So when they are not happy, when you didn't take a food which went to that far. So when they are not happy, they don't just determine your health and sickness, but they also determine that I'm about to make a very big claim. Whom you marry, what career you will decide. So you understand my point, that those bacteria has to be happy. And if they don't find food, they can even start eating your gut. So those are these two concepts, if you understand, now you are standing in front of your dining table and there is a bread which traditionally your mother has been eating, roti or khubz, and then there is a hulled barley. What you will choose? Hulled barley, steak or the mince meat? Steak, because mince meat or the lasagna, maybe the lasagna is too much processing of the meat because it was minced and then it was cooked, then in lasagna plate it went in the oven for some, so it's a total 6 hours of processing. So you will take the steak, you will take celery stick or the one in the soup. So your concept of the things will change, and I don't want people to go on diet, but they need to understand. So today, say suppose you have a birthday of your child and you must take the cake. You can't let him down, right? So I would recommend, yeah, go ahead with that. But do one thing. Before cutting the cake, take your hull barley. So then when cake goes inside, it doesn't have the same effect as of the when you took the cake just like that, empty stomach. Or today you are seeing you made a wonderful biryani for your family. How would you take that? Take your hull barley or something super unprocessed or the mixed beans. Now take your rice, it will not have the same food coma effect. So, just understanding the food and things. And in this book, Gene Eating by Giles, he is explaining all those experiments which can, like one simple fact that if you put with the cereal blueberries, it give us effect that it's a healthy food. It's not. Cereal is cereal. Like it's way too processed. So, all these concepts now we have to understand. If we understand them, then we can manage. And sometimes it's really hard to even starting this. So maybe to boost yourself, to encourage yourself, you can have some of the semaglutide or Ozempic in the beginning just to encourage, because PCO is not just physical or mental disease, it's emotional disease. So a bit encouragement, a dress which didn't fit you for many years and then it started fitting. You need motivation. When you have PCO, you might have seen people, you need a lot of motivation to go on that path. And when you must celebrate, we must celebrate those small milestones we keep achieving.
Right.
So sometimes just having this Ozempic give us some milestone which we didn't. We have some dress hanging in our closet for very long time waiting that it like we can wear it, and you did that and you might be motivated. Now there's another dress which I kept for a long time. We have a very famous gynecologist in my past, I know her. So she used to tell her, she was a head of the department, and she used to tell all the department girls that when you put on, do not buy new dresses. Just keep those and keep looking them. So you will achieve those goals.
Right.
Yeah.
Doctor, how is gut microbiome linked with PCOS?
It is a lot. Since I talk about that you are 10% human, they are really, really important. And we should understand. I feel these things should be taught in the schools. We should know these concepts, because more than knowing the history, who made what, and how things came, our body is more important.
Yeah.
We can give up a car which stopped working, but we cannot give up on our bodies. We have to keep them forever. So it should be taught in the schools that how microbiomes are important, and how the gut work, how it's not medical thing, it's my everyday thing when I'm selecting food. So I should know about the microbiome, I should take care of their health, and I should know more about them. It is really important.
Okay, doctor. And how far is mental health affected in PCOS?
I think too much. Recently, I had a girl, she was grade 12, and she was busy with exam, and they came so desperate. They said, we are okay with the Ozempic. And I said, you need certain evaluation before going for Ozempic. So, she really need to reduce weight. And I was thinking, when she goes to school, how her friends treat her, what boys might be saying in front of her, in her back. It's very important, all the motivation. I see a lot of girls when they come and they say, we lost weight, and their personality change in terms of motivation. I have a group of PCO in the WhatsApp group, because I'm just planning a lot of education. But I started with the 3 girls. Out of them, 2 are already pregnant, very motivated. Like personality changes, even their face change. One lost 15 kg, become pregnant. Other lost 20 kg, became pregnant and become super pretty. So, I was just thinking, it changes your personality completely when you be in your best form. And it's not just the looks, it's a fatigue and depression also. So they might be suffering all those things also. But once they achieve those milestones, they also get rid of fatigue and depression. They find themselves in their best selves, which want to achieve all those goals which they always wanted to. So it's very, very important. This is the reason it should be a continued process. It should be motivation. There should be lectures. There should be community workshops. There should be community talks. People should talk about it openly, give education to each other. There shouldn't be shaming, body shaming. It should be realized that it's more of the disease of, like it can affect all your systems, like having fatty liver, having diabetes, hypertension. It's all big risk. So I feel like it should be like people should talk about it. It should be normalized, and people should motivate each other rather. It should be body shame. It should be more of the motivation. So best will be when a group who is suffering from the PCO, they have a get together a monthly basis. They have a talk face to face, online, and they should understand, because medicine is moving fast, concepts are coming, and sometimes they're not just limited to the medical books. So the things right now I'm talking, it's not from the gynae books, it's more from which I read from other books like Your 10% Human, Gene Eating, but they actually translate the right concept and right intervention what we have to do. But if we don't understand, we don't take the pain of understanding them, we cannot do anything.
Doctor, how is weight linked with PCOS? Is it very hard for patients to lose weight when they have PCOS? What is the correlation?
If somebody has PCO and they're obese, it's a good thing. But if somebody has PCO and they're not obese and they're very slim, it's not a good thing, because they do not have any intervention to do. I mean, they're slim, they're perfectly in shape. What they do to bring their metabolic profile normal, but a person who is obese, they should be happy because they have some intervention they will do and they will bring their best back. So there are so many interventions, but yes, but obesity is normally, generally, but not always related to the PCO. But some people, they are obese, but they have perfect hormonal profile. They do not have subfertility. They do not have anything. And you get surprised when you open their profiles and they're very obese. But some people, they are slim and they have bad profile. But generally, PCO is linked with the obesity. This is the reason obesity surgery, Ozempic, semaglutide, Mounjaro, all these things work.
Okay.
Actually, I want to talk about apple cider vinegar tablets also. They increase sensitivity of the insulin. They create fullness. So that should be taken with the food. But problem with the vinegar is when you take it, it can affect your dentine. Some people, they mix with the water and they take it with the straw, but still it can cause esophagitis. So they can take, 1 tablespoon in the water, a half glass water or 1 glass water with the straw. At least it will save their dentine. But what about esophagitis? So tablets are available. The many brands are there. So if you're taking tablet, generally should not exceed more than 1000 milligram, or if they tolerate, they can go for the 3 tablets, which is 1 tablet for 50 milligrams, so they can take with each meal.
Right.
That is also that is established and research proven and recommended for the PCO people.
Okay.
Then exercise. Exercise has really a lot of role, but you really don't have to hit the gym. You can just use a smart watch and you can complete your steps, whatever your goals are, whatever you can tolerate. But of course, all kind of exercise, it could be high intensity training, it could be walk, it could be brisk walk, it could be just weight training, it could be treadmill, cycling. So whatever works for people, they can do that also. And it really has a role. You can be on diet or maybe nothing you might be taking, and still you might not lose weight. So it has a role. I feel like we are so active, so many goals. So sometimes just wearing a smart watch and having things, so it motivates you because you know your goal is not achieved. So I do 8,000 steps also. So one time it was already 12 and I didn't complete my goal, and then me and my husband went out and we completed the goal, which has to be 8,000. Then for the next day we already achieved, so we deducted for the next day and we completed the goal for the next day also. So having a goal, it's very productive. So like if people do not have time and they're busy with the job, kids and other tasks, they can do just the 8,000 step or 15,000 depending how much they need.
Right. Doctor, could you please suggest, we know there's a lot of new treatments which has come up for PCOS. What is the recently used? Could you let us know what are the few recent medical treatments which you have?
I'll go by step ladder. First things, apple cider vinegar everybody should have. You don't need anything to have it. It's not very special. You don't need prescription. Tablet, they're amazing because they go directly to the stomach and they decrease your appetite and increase insulin sensitivity, and they decrease glucose spike. Number 2, glucophage. Glucophage is amazing, and it's not like that some people come and they said we start glucophage and we'll be forever on glucophage. It's not like that. Like somewhere like 20 years back, when I was 20 years younger, we used to use it for weight loss, like to reduce weight. And I remember we used to keep it in our pockets, and I used to work in one of the medical college which used to provide even the meal, like they used to have a mess and we used to go there. So rather eating the meal, we used to distribute each other these tablets, and we used to eat just like group of doctors, young doctors, everybody eating that glucophage. And it's not harmful, and like if there has to be any harm, it would have come to me first, because I already use it a lot. But later on research came that if you're not PCO, if you're not PCOS or PCOD, it will not affect your weight. But honestly it did. There's certain, it's not very robust data, but there's certain data, TikTok data by the way, it's somebody is researching and they're saying that this might be anti-aging also. It's not very robust data. So I was meeting one of my friend after maybe 24 years later, and I told her, you're looking so young, what you're doing? She said, I'm already diabetic and I'm on glucophage. I said, anti-aging? She said, yes, this is the reason. So taking glucophage is not a harm if you do not have side effects, so one can go on with that. And you never know, the data come in later years that it's really anti-aging, but so far it's not very proper data. So glucophage, yes, whatever you can tolerate, whether you can tolerate slow release or the regular one, 500 or the 1000 milligram. And then I will not recommend semaglutide or the Ozempic Mounjaro for long term. I would say if you want to begin and it's not happening, so just to motivate yourself to achieve some milestone which can make you do and motivate, one can have it. Or if you find it difficult, because once you overcome some of the insulin resistance, maybe you'll be motivated enough to go on. So if you can't do it without that, but first thing I always say, review your dining table. And we forget and review your dining table with these two concepts, microbiome, and they are at the end of 26 feet of your gut.
Right.
And is your food will pass? Is it is it able to pass all 26 feet of the gut, or even if it not, how far it is about to go?
Right.
And even if you have to take something which will not go very far, so your order has to be the food which goes far, then less. So if you have to start and you have to take something, like maybe you want to take ice cream today, maybe you want to reward at the end of the week that you did an amazing week and you love that ice cream which is topped with the caramel and the nuts. So take some food which is least processed, take that and then take that. So there's some concept I heard, it's not very robust again, food with clothing. So you are taking this hulled barley or the beans or something, you took it first, and then you took something which is less processed, like something which is very fast dissolving, maybe the birthday, and you have to take the cake on that day. So you took those things and then you took food with clothing, so that cake will not affect the gut as it was doing without empty stomach. So it will still take time because there's so much there, gut is interacting, so much fiber of the hulled barley or the beans, all those things. And juices, they're raw candy.
Right.
Juices have nothing. A smoothie, I do not recommend. Your processor should work less. So reviewing your dining table and thinking before eating. More than, there's a chapter in Gene Eating, all calories are not equal. It means celery stick, 6 calorie raw, 30 calories in the soup. So what is our fault? We check the calories, but whatever the processing you did, what about that? We check the barley calorie. It's not the same when you made the bread out of it. So it's changed. So give your gut work. So if you gave your gut work, it will bring best signals, and the best signals are farther away in the gut. So these are the interventions, and this thing will go lifelong.
Yeah.
You might be seeing some families, everybody is slim because probably they have a certain way of eating. So we need to understand, and you see them, they're not very motivated to do exercise, but why they're slim? Also, there's something called lipotrophic body. Some people are slim because they do not have the fat outer layer, which is good actually. So if I have a fat in my subcutaneous tissue, it's best because my extra, all the calorie go there and gets stored, and it doesn't interact my bloodstream. But if I do not have that fat, which is in the people who have lipotrophic body, it is always interacting my bloodstream. It becomes the visceral fat, which is way too dangerous than the subcutaneous fat. Subcutaneous fat is a wonderful store which let extra calorie go to outside your body and like in the body, but in the outer layer, and let it be there silently. But the fat which is visceral and gets stored between your organs, that interacts with you, and that interacts in a very wrong way. It releases the chemomediator, which can make you really, really sick.
There is a scientific study which I have read recently that if at all you want to have a sweet, it's better to have after your meal, big meal basically, maybe after lunch or dinner. What do you think about it?
Of course, like scientifically, what evidence we discuss, it is very, it is plausible because sweet, because once your gut is busy in doing this stuff, then you may be needing some sugar boost to continue with your activities. And also, you taking the sweet at the end will not affect your body if you take it empty stomach.
Right.
If you take empty stomach, everything is open and it will just cause glucose rise, insulin spike, and insulin resistance.
Right.
So when you take it after some meal, it affects in a nice way, not in a bad way.
Yeah, so the absorption goes down.
Exactly.
Right. Doctor, is it possible to reduce the long-term complications from PCOS?
Of course. See, PCOS is a metabolic syndrome. So I always give example. There's an insulin resistance, which is mommy, and she has children. Polycystic ovarian syndrome, diabetes, hypertension, fatty liver, fatigue, depression, obstructive sleep apnea. These all are cousins. So if you break the mommy, the insulin resistance, everything will be all right. So we talked about lifestyle modification is the most important. Your walk, your exercise, your activity, and reviewing your diet. Rather buying a diet from somewhere and just not liking that diet, it's better. See, you can make biryani also out of barley, quinoa, steel cut oats. So it's not that you are just barred from everything because it's your lifestyle. This is the reason we call it lifestyle. We don't call it diet. So learn like what is the food which is the best one. Rather going for the fruit juices or a smoothie, take it like just like that. So, and even the fruits are overrated, by the way. They're fructose. So if you're taking the fruit, choose wisely. Like pineapple is the one which may help you with the insulin resistance, guava and papaya. So choose wisely also. And it's not that you're barred from everything. Enjoy everything, but you should know the timing of doing them. If you have to reward yourself with the ice cream topped with caramel and nuts, you know what you have to take before. Super unprocessed thing. So one thing, the lifestyle modification, activity and the food. And when you're reviewing the food, 2 principles: unprocessed, because you need to release the signals from the later part of the gut and you have to respect your 90% microbiome. Then comes meds. Before meds, apple cider vinegar, which increases the insulin sensitivity, better in the tablet forms, because when you take it in tablet forms, it avoids your affecting your teeth and the esophagus. It directly goes to stomach where it has to work. Number 2, glucophage. Actually, I love glucophage. It just, even some, if you have right now, offer me glucophage, I would rather take it, rather you give me some sweet or some cake, I would rather prefer to take the glucophage. Then comes the, if you haven't achieved your milestone, which you have to, and it's a delay or process is slow and you want to motivate yourself, I totally recommend semaglutide, which are Mounjaro and Ozempic, and they're really amazing. I have seen people transitioning in front of me with those meds, and I have one patient, I have right now 3 patients who were taking Ozempic for other reason, and they just become pregnant, and then she had still Ozempic in her fridge and she wanted to sell because that was untouched. And that patient, she's pregnant, if she might be listening, maybe she will comment down there. So she sold that Ozempic because now she's pregnant, and their infertility comes with the PCO, and a lot of people in the world has taken Ozempic, and there's a term out there which is called Ozempic babies. So they're not certain facies of Ozempic, they are the babies. Mummy wasn't deciding to be pregnant and she wasn't able to be pregnant, so she wasn't using any contraception, and then one day she decided to take Ozempic and she's on Ozempic, and since she was not on contraception, she didn't realize which day her fertility returned and she's pregnant. So those are called Ozempic babies. But most important is you cannot be on Ozempic lifelong. You need to understand diet. You have to incorporate activities in your life. Giles Yeo says it's a simple physics formula: in and out. So whatever you took in form of food, that has to go out in the form of activity.
Does taking contraceptive pills helps PCOS?
Yes, it does help. So when you take the birth control pills from outside, and that pills goes to your body, it runs in your bloodstream, it gives a message to the head office in the brain that we already have enough hormones. So it doesn't give the stimulating signals to the ovary, so your ovary gets shut down temporarily. It's not like forever. For that certain period, like the moment you stop pills, there's no hormone, and your brain start giving signal to the ovary that start working again. There's no hormone. So when your ovary doesn't work, because in the PCO it wasn't working nicely, it was making eggs which were not being released. They used to go to the door on the surface of the ovary, but they were never released. And because they were not released, they are there. They are not supposed to be there. And then they are active, they are making bad hormones. Those bad hormones are the one which make you PCO. So if you start taking hormones and ovaries silent, not working, so maybe it will save you from those bad hormones production. It can also stop the formation of extra egg, which are called polycyst mean multiple cysts. Those are the eggs which never reach their destiny of being released. So that stops it, make your ovary better, and also you save your eggs. Because when you're not ovulating, probably ovary recruits a lot of egg and they're being wasted, and then they're there in the ovary affecting the healthy eggs also. So yes, taking pills make your metabolic profile better. It may save your ovas to be used later. And also when you're using a lot of eggs every cycle, you can be closer, your menopause could be earlier. Here you will save everything, your metabolic profile, your bed hormones from those unovulated eggs, and your menopause might not be getting closer. And when you need to become pregnant, there will be more available eggs than if you use them every cycle and they are being useless and maybe harmful by staying in your ovary.
Right.
It does have benefit.
Does PCOS cause early menopause?
Yes, it may. Because every month you will recruit more eggs because they are ineffective and they're staying there and they're affecting your healthy eggs also. And ovary will become a bad environment. There are students from a university who should go and pass out and be in the community, but they're there. So when they're not getting degrees, they're just doing bad stuff there. So same like that, your ovary is having unwanted stuff. So unwanted stuff is not doing good job, it's harming and making the environment bad. So your ovary will be more healthy if it doesn't have those not ovulated eggs. So menopause also can get closer.
What would you recommend our patients that, something which you can do at home, like other than the medications, what you have to focus on?
It is holistic care when it comes to the PCO. It is, and compassion not just from doctor, from the family. They need to understand these people who are suffering and help them, support them day-to-day basis about what to be done, how diet has to be reviewed. Sometimes they might be having bad days, so somebody supporting them in a compassionate way, that you think about it, do you really need to take this food, and helping them being active, maybe having a night stroll together, maybe having a walk together, maybe planning an activity like hiking together. So it should be active lifestyle, and diet really has to be reviewed, and it will be really compassionate. The person who is cooking, they should review what they are actually cooking. So it's a whole lifestyle thing. And if mother think that what they're serving their daughters, even their sons, and review the whole thing, review the dining table, that will be the best thing in the long term, and it will work.
Can you give us one simple tip for all the mothers out there, how to prevent PCOS in their children?
Educate themselves. Know what is happening and why is happening, and what has to be done, and what was different in the past and now, which is affecting, making girls more to have PCO. Like, it's not very hard. There are forums, you have a forum, everybody's out there educating. They should educate, and maybe it should be a home wisdom, it should be a family wisdom to understand, because it's not just affecting the girls, it's affecting the boys also, obesity and everything. So I would say one single thing is knowing what's happening and what has to be done.
So doctor, how is PCOS affecting skin and hair?
Yeah, skin, people can have more acne and hirsutism because of a high testosterone, and they can have alopecia, like frontal baldness. All things not very girly can affect. Yeah,
Right. Thank you.
yeah.
What makes you happy being a doctor?
I love educating people, and when by that education they prevent some disease and they feel satisfied, it's incredibly fulfilling when they know how to navigate that disease. It could be anything, even the diabetes in pregnancy. It could be anything, somebody coming for planning pregnancy, or it could be anything. So my I go more natural and I love educating, and there's nothing more satisfying seeing a happy, satisfied patient, a confident person who knows how to navigate the problems they are having.